So, welcome back. Today, we'll be trying to understand the resonance phenomena and to understand what is the how resonance happens in NMR spectroscopy. We need to understand a very important concept which is called as rotating frame transformation. So, let us see what is the concept rotating frame transformation. And we are trying to understand using this how resonance happens in NMR spectroscopy. Resonance is very important for any spectroscopy. Like whenever there is a energy level, there is a difference in between two energy levels, and you shine a light which matches the wavelength, which matches the energy difference between these two levels, then only the transition happens between from one state to another state, and that process is called as resonance. Now let us see how rotating frame transformation helps us to understand resonance in NMR spectroscopy. So let us visualize the transverse magnetization again, which is precessing about B0 along z-axis, right? So let us say that this is our, so I'm just looking at x and y coordinate axis, and z axis is coming out of the plane of the board, and now my magnetization is along minus y, and what it does is it precesses about z axis, right? Something like this. So it keeps on rotating in this manner. Now if there is no transverse relaxation, as we discussed, there is no spin relaxation, then the magnetization M will keep on rotating in this plane forever. But as it turns out that dephasing or the coherence loss happens over time, and the picture actually looks not like this, not like a rotating thing. I mean, if you try to map the uh, uh, tip of this vector, this will not be a circle, this will actually follow a spiral kind of thing, right? So I mean, if you have this thing, so slowly the vector size will keep on reducing in length, and that's how it will keep on forming a spiral kind of thing if you're looking from the top, something like this, right? So here the vector length is slowly reducing and it eventually dies down, right? So this is a spiral in 2D if you consider transverse relaxation, and if you consider longitudinal relaxation also, this whole vector actually starts to move back in z-axis, and this will be a spiral cone kind of surface that the vector will follow, right? So this we had discussed in last class. Now what happens uh, when you are static and you are looking at, you are watching how this is precessing or how this is relaxing back, this is how the motion will look like. It will be a spiral in a 3D cone, right? So the vector will keep on moving in a spiral cone fashion till it reaches out to z-axis, right? Now what now let us say, let us imagine that you are actually sitting on to the uh, vector M, and then you are watching it relax back. Then how will it look like? So that means the relative velocity, relative angular velocity between you and between the observer and the magnetization is now zero, right? So there, so with respect to you, it is not moving. So when you try to observe, it is not moving. So meaning, then if I look at uh, the magnetization, Okay, it stays. So not this one. So let us not consider any relaxation, any T2 or T1 relaxation. Let us just consider that the magnetization is precessing in a circular fashion. In this particular case, if you move to something called as rotating frame, or so I'm now writing XR and YR to highlight that X, the coordinate system itself, is moving with the same angular velocity as the magnetization M is moving. So here M is moving at a certain angular velocity, and now my XR and YR are also moving. Or in other words, that I'm sitting on this M and I'm now trying to watch it as it moves. So to me, it will now appear as static, right? So this is called as a laboratory frame or lab frame. And this is called as a rotating frame. So under rotating frame, the magnetization would appear static. It is not static, but it would appear static. It's an illusion that is created by assuming that the rotating frame, the frame itself is rotating, right? So M stays stationary. M stays stationary. Or rather, we should say appears stationary, right? Instead of stays. Now let us say that if T2 relaxation, if you consider motion in 2D, spiral motion in 2D, that is, if you consider T2 relaxation, then how the picture will look like. So if you consider T2 relaxation, the vector length would simply keep on reducing as you are watching it, right? So it is not moving in any kind of circular or spiral fashion. The vector M in rotating frame, I mean. So the vector M keeps on reducing in length, right? That's what the effect is, effect of rotating frame transformation onto the magnetization, which is undergoing only T2 relaxation. Now let us extend this a little bit, and if we now consider if T1 and T2 both are considered. So in this case, now we have to draw it in 3D because T1 relaxation means the magnetization has to go back to Z axis. Now again, this is in rotating frame. Now what happens, originally the magnetization was in minus Y axis, and now it will simply flip back to Z axis. In the rotating frame, there is no spiral motion, or it will not map the surface of the spiral cone. It will simply flip back to Z axis, just like a bar magnet does when you put it in Earth's magnetic field, right? So this is only an illusion, and this helps us understand resonance phenomena. And this particular process, the transformation of coordinate system, is called as rotating frame transformation. All right. I hope this transformation is clear. So let us see that what is the effect of this, okay, on different equations, which equation of motions of this magnetization, right? So let us see that. So now imagine that spin is precessing at Larmor frequency omega naught. Okay. Now if you apply, if your frame is also rotating at let's say if frame is rotating at some omega, let us call it as omega RF, then your actual uh, uh, precession frequency or actual frequency, angular frequency of this will now be given by omega naught minus omega RF, and this is denoted by, let's say, offset, capital omega. So this is called as offset. This is the original Larmor frequency, Larmor precession. And this is called as reference frequency. There are several names to this. This is called as reference frequency, also called as transmitter frequency, and we will see later on that receiver is also set at same frequency, so it can also be called as receiver frequency. Okay, or it can also be called as carrier frequency. Right. So now let us see how rotating frame transformation actually affects the maths. Okay. So we have seen that the equation of motion of magnetization M is given by this, we had covered in last class, right? So this is the field, this is the magnetization, and then dm by dt, right? There is a cross product, and this comes as a result of application of torque, concept of torque, right? So let's not go into that again. We have already covered this. Let's now see how this is affected. So once we move to rotating frame, the equation of motion changes to, let us now write it as dmt by dt in rotating frame is equal to dmt by dt in lab frame plus the component which is mt cross omega RF. Okay, so now mt is moving with omega RF, so that component is also added to this, right? Okay, now this equation can be converted into, so we can write dmt by dt in rotating frame is equal to d. So we can convert the previous one into mt cross gamma bt plus omega RF. Okay. Now if we call this portion as B effective, as gamma B effective, we can now reduce this equation to dmt by dt in rotating frame is equal to mt cross gamma B effective, which is essentially the same form as in the lab frame, right? I mean, if you look at the lab frame equation, this is the same form. It's just that the field about which it is precessing, the magnetization was precessing about, initially it was BT, now it is B effective. So we will see how B effective is calculated and all, but the idea is that rotating frame transformation does not change the behavior of magnetization, as in the description of motion is defined by a very similar equation. Okay, so now let us see how do you represent it. So let's see if I so this is my x, y and z, and let's say if I have applied B0, or this is B0 is the field which is actually experienced by the spin, then you apply a certain field which is opposite in direction, and this is basically nothing but omega RF by gamma, and this will be negative, right? So now whatever is left is, so this is under rotating frame. So now what is left is delta B naught. Okay, so B naught minus omega RF gamma divided by gamma. So delta B naught is nothing but B naught minus omega RF by gamma. So this is a fictitious field which is basically generated by rotation of the frame, rotation of the coordinate frame, so that it reduces the original field which is experienced by the spins. Okay, so now this is this becomes your delta B0, right? This is in laboratory, this is in rotating frame. So now let us consider the effect of radio frequency pulse, because to carry out resonance we have to apply a radio frequency pulse. So let us see the effect of rotating frame transformation on an RF pulse. So you are applying RF pulse which is used to create transverse magnetization, right? So we had seen in first lecture that any EM wave can be written as y is equal to a sine omega t. This is just to remind you, plus phi, right? So where phi or phi is the phase factor, then omega t is the omega is the angular frequency, A is the amplitude. So now when you apply a RF pulse, or you apply a radio frequency pulse to create transverse magnetization, how do you describe it mathematically? So you can write BRFT. So radio frequency pulse is nothing but another magnetic field or another EM wave. So because we are interested in magnetic interaction, so we will only be considering the magnetic part of that EM wave. So let us see BRFT, which is the magnetic part of the EM wave. Okay, so I will write EM. This EM wave is nothing but the radio wave, right? Is equal to 2B1, which is the amplitude part, and then the angular frequency part, cos of omega RF t plus phi. Okay, and if this is applied in any particular direction, okay, let's not worry about the direction right now. or let's say if this is applied along x-axis, so I will write I cap. Okay, now this is my amplitude of the wave. This is the angular frequency, and this is the phase, right? Okay, how do you show it pictorially? So you have remember that you have a B0 which is felt by, so I'm not saying the B0 which is applied, I'm saying the B0 which is felt by the nuclei, and then or the spin, then you have a field which is omega RF by T by gamma. So this creates a delta B naught over here. This is one field, and then you have oscillating field with magnitude 2B1. So B1 on this side of the origin and B1 on the other side. So this is a linearly polarized oscillating magnetic field, which is BRFT, right? So BRFT is applied like this, and this particular angle is the phi, which is the phase, right? And then this has angular frequency as omega RFT. All right. So now intuitively, if you think, it is difficult to understand how a linearly polarized oscillating magnetic field causes M0 to flip when spins are actually precessing about z-axis. So let us see. So what is happening with spins? So individual spins are precessing. So let us say that this is my spin, which is precessing about z-axis, right? Let's say clockwise spin is there. Okay, now this is precessing clockwise with certain frequency omega naught. Now I am saying that I'm applying a BRF which is linearly polarized, and it is oscillating at certain frequency, and now it is not easy to imagine that a linearly polarized thing will actually flip the this magnetization down to beta state, right? So to understand it better, what we can do is we can compose this linearly oscillating field or linearly polarized field into two circularly polarized fields which are rotating in opposite directions. So what I mean is I can break this BRFT into two circularly polarized fields, something like this. So one component is going clockwise, another component is going anti-clockwise, and the resultant is nothing but the linearly oscillating linearly polarized oscillating field. Okay, how do I do it mathematically? So let us try to decompose that. So let me go to next page. So BRFT is given by 2B1 cos omega RF T plus phi. Now I can write this as B1 cos omega RF T plus phi plus B1 sin omega RF T plus phi plus B1 cos omega RF T plus phi minus B1 sin omega RF T plus phi. So you can see that these two components can cancel, and then you will eventually get the same thing back. But now these two are independently can be considered as two rotating circularly polarized fields. So if this one is a clockwise, then this one can be considered as counterclockwise, CCW. Okay, so this is clockwise circularly polarized fields. Now one of these component will interact with the spinning with the precessing spin, and the other component will not, because its direction is not matching, right? I mean, so what I'm saying is that if I have, let's draw the same picture again. So if my spin is precessing like this, and my linearly polarized field is now broken up into a black component which is in the same direction, and let's say a red component which is in opposite direction. So now the two black components, this one and this one, will match in the direction and in the frequency, and thereby they will interact and they will cause the resonance, right? Whereas the other component will not interact and will barely affect the spins. Okay, so now let's see if gamma is greater than 0. So for gamma, let's say spins are precessing in clockwise manner, then first component, this one, interacts with the spin and is called as resonant field. If gamma is less than 0, then spins are precessing in counterclockwise direction. Then second component becomes resonant field. The other one becomes non-resonant. Well, the leftover component, that the non-resonant component, would affect the spins, but in a very but the effect is very, very small. The effect of non-resonant component is of the order of B1 by B0, 2B0 actually, and the whole square. And this is a very small number. We will see when we take an example, which is a very small number and often ignored. Because it does not interact, and this is actually called as, the effect is called as, this is Bloch-Siegert shift. Okay, so we'll see that later in the course in little more details where the effect is. But for now, we will ignore the non-resonant part, and then we can thus write the BRF T, that is the radio frequency field, as B1 cos omega RF T plus phi plus B1 sine omega RF T plus phi. Okay, now this can be actually written as I, because this is in the I side, and then you have this is in the J side. That is, this is along x-axis, this is along y-axis, so you can write I and J. Alright, so when you do rotating frame transformation, the time dependence of the angular part of BRFT goes away and only phase part remains. So that means this part actually is gone, because your field is also rotating at the same frequency, or your frame is also rotating at the same frequency, right? So what you do is, so then you can write BRF as B1 cos phi I cap plus B1 sin phi j cap. So the time dependence part of this angular portion, angular frequency, is gone, right? So now you can actually show this thing as, so if you want to show in the vector diagram, so you can show it as so now I'm directly writing the delta B naught. I'm not writing the how it comes delta B naught. So delta B naught, and then this is your B1, which is the magnitude. And now if you take this side, if you this is your phi. So if you now consider that this side, this side it will be called as B1 cos phi, and this will be called as B1 sin phi. So the vector will be given as B1, right? So delta B naught, and the effective field will be the vector sum of these two, which will be somewhere like this. So vector sum is given by B effective. So if you remember that how a vector sum is written, so if you have a vector A and a vector B perpendicular to each other, then the vector sum will be something like this. So this vector R will be equal to A plus B. So similarly here we have B effective, that is the effective field now is equal to delta B naught vector plus B1, okay, or BRF we can write, because this is the BRF thing. Okay, in other words, what we can write is, we can write B effective as B1 cos phi I cap plus B1 sin phi j cap plus delta B naught k cap, right? And now if you want to calculate the magnitude of B effective, this is the vector. and simply call it as B effective now. So this will be the dot product of this whole vector with itself. It will be something like this, and then the square root. So B1 cos phi square, B1 square plus cos phi square, B1 square sin phi square. Don't write it as square here. Cos square phi sin square phi plus delta B naught square. So this is nothing but cos square phi plus sin square phi will be 1. So you will be left with B1 square plus delta B naught square. This is your B effective. You can also write B effective is equal to B1 over sine theta. Okay, where theta is the angle. So let me draw this again. Delta B naught. This is B1. So this angle is phi, and theta is the angle which B effective is making with respect to z-axis, or the angle between delta B naught and B effective. So that angle is theta. This is theta. So B effective can be written in terms of B1 and sine theta, right? I mean perpendicular upon. So you can calculate perpendicular upon hypotenuse, right? So simple trigonometry. All right. Okay, now this angle theta can also be calculated. So let us see. We'll see why this angle is important, because we need to know the orientation of B effective very precisely. So angle theta between delta B naught and B effective is given by tan theta equals B1 upon delta B naught. Right, this is again very simple to realize. Now B1 is B1 and delta B naught is nothing but minus of offset divided by gamma, right? This we saw earlier. Now this thus can be written as minus of gamma B1 divided by offset, and this is written as minus of omega 1 plus of omega 1 actually. Yeah, omega 1 by offset. So omega 1 is nothing but the RF field, the radio frequency field, right, corresponding to B1. So thus theta can be written as tan inverse of omega 1 by offset. Right? So where omega 1 is RF field in terms of frequency units, of course, radians per second, and offset is the difference between Larmor frequency and transmitter frequency. Right, so that should be very, very clear. Also BRFT is many times directly referred to as B1 field. So if I'm mentioning B1 field anywhere, so I mean precisely that it is BRF field, BRF of time. Yeah. Okay. So now in the rotating frame, when B1 field is applied, the MRT rotates about the B effective with an angular frequency of omega effective, right? So now let us see what I mean is, so now if you are applying a B1 field and you have, so this is your magnetization, let's say this is your MRT, magnetization in rotating frame. This is rotating, right? So now if you are applying a B effective, so B1 field, so there would be a B effective and this will now precess about B effective. So let us say that if my B effective is along B1, okay, in what condition it will be along B1? When there is no offset and the phase is 0. So when offset is 0, and that means delta B naught is 0, that means there is nothing in z-axis, and phi is 0, right? So in that case your BRFT is actually equal to B1 I cap. There is no y component now because that goes to 0. So now I can call it as B1 field. So now it will precess about this B. So my B effective now is square root of 2B1 square B1 square plus sorry, not 2, delta B naught square. So since delta B naught is 0 from here, so I can say that B effective is equal to B1, and now B1 is only along x-axis. So MRT precesses about B1 and it will keep on doing that motion, right? So this is the effect of applying the RF field, and this particular process is called as resonance. So essentially what you have done is you have removed the effect of applied magnetic field, that is B0, and now MT, or the magnetization M, actually starts to precess about the radio frequency, that is the applied RF field, okay? And now you can actually make it dance to the tune of B1, right? So MT, so let us say that if you switch on B1 only for a time, so that it goes towards minus y-axis, okay, or towards minus z-axis, or towards plus y-axis. So it is in your control that how long you want to turn on B1 field, so that MZ is now rotated to M minus y, or to M minus z, or to my, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so one can stop the RF field just at the right time when MT reaches minus y-axis. Okay, now let us call the duration for which B1 field is applied as tau p. Okay, later on we'll see that this is also called as pulse length. Okay, So now let us, this is the duration during which B1 field is applied. So now if you see that the angle to which M is being rotated, let us call this angle as flip angle, and the flip angle can be denoted by alpha. So I'm writing flip angle. This is by how much M is being rotated towards the transverse plane, right, or away from Z axis. Okay, so alpha is given by omega effective, because now it is precessing about omega effective, about B effective into tau P, right? So alpha can be calculated as angular frequency into the time for which that particular movement is happening, right? So for the period during which B1 field is applied. Now, what is omega effective? Omega effective can be written as negative gamma B effective tau P, right? And this is nothing but B effective is B1 by sine theta, we had seen that, minus gamma B1 tau P by sine theta. And now this can be written as omega 1 tau P sine theta. And now if your offset is 0, if offset is 0, theta is 90 degree, and thus sine theta is 1. So alpha can be now written as simply omega 1 tau P, right? Okay. So one can, given the value of omega 1 and tau P, one can easily calculate alpha. So for example, if you want to calculate, let's say for 90 degrees, so you can put in the values of alpha as pi by 2, and you know, if you know the value of omega 1, then you can calculate the value of tau P, right? Okay, so that is easy. So this is called as flip angle. Now let us quickly take an example of let us consider water sample. Okay. So in case of water, now there is only a single pulse. Let us say that we are working at B0 equal to 11.74 Tesla. So that means my protons are precessing, water protons will be precessing at, let's say, 500 megahertz, right, omega naught. Now if my rotating frame frequency is also set at, so I can set my rotating frame frequency RF at same 500 megahertz. So my offset will be 0 here, because omega naught minus omega RF will be 0, right? So that is a very simple case. Now let us consider a case of where different type of protons are present. So let's say we have CH3, CH2, OH molecule, right? So now in this case, the three protons precess at slightly different frequencies due to non-equal electron densities around each proton. So if you see carefully that this particular proton is closest to electron withdrawing atom, oxygen, whereas this proton is further away and methyl protons are further away, right? So electron pull of by this oxygen to different protons will be different, and that's why the electron densities will be different, right? So this actually the different electron density shields the protons from applied magnetic field, and hence even though the applied magnetic field is 11.74 Tesla for each of them, but the experienced field will be different. So let us say that corresponding precessional frequency, Larmor precession frequency will also be different, because B0, experienced B0 is different. So that's why omega naught will be different. So let us say that omega naught for CH3 is given by 500 megahertz, let's say plus 500 hertz, or this can be written as 500.0005, right? This is now in megahertz. Similarly, omega naught CH2 is 500 megahertz plus, let's say this is 1000 hertz, right? Same thing you can write here, omega naught OH, this is for hydroxyl proton, so 500 megahertz plus 2000 hertz. Okay, so now what you can do is you can keep your precessional, you can keep your carrier frequency at any of these resonances, right? Any of these protons, right? So let us say that if I'm keeping my omega RF at, let us say if I keep it at 500 megahertz, we can discuss different scenarios. So if we do that, then my offset for CH3 will be 500 hertz, offset for CH2 will be 1000 hertz, and offset for OH will be 2000 hertz. That is very easy to calculate, right? So you just take the difference between these two and you get the offset. Now I can choose my offset differently. So let's say if I choose my offset, carrier frequency as omega naught CH2. So what I'm doing is I'm keeping it at 500 megahertz plus 1000 hertz. So in that case, what will be the offset of different protons? So offset for CH3 will be, in that case, this will be minus 500 hertz. And offset for CH2 will be 0 because I'm keeping at that frequency, and offset of OH will be plus 1500, no, 1000 hertz, right? So what is the meaning of this? What I mean is that, let's say if I have 3 protons, so let me draw it a little smaller. So this is for CH3, this is for CH2, this is for OH. Now you can appreciate the fact that the delta B naught for CH3 will be corresponding to this divided by gamma, right? This is now minus 500 divided by gamma. Delta B naught will be 0 here. Delta B naught is 0 because there is no offset, and here the delta B naught will be in the positive side. Thousand by gamma, right? So now accordingly, if you are applying now a B1 in all 3 cases, same B1 is applied, let's say. So this is very exaggeratedly small. So typically the delta B naught values will be very, very small and B1 values will be very long. because this is of the so typical values for B1 are 25 kilohertz, whereas delta B naught is of the order of few hundred hertz. So this value will be typically, this vector will be very small, and B effective will be essentially towards B1, right? Okay, so this will be very long. But now, if you see that little bit of delta B naught would affect the B effective. So B effective will be different here, than here, right? So there will be small effect of that delta B naught onto the resonance positions or the chemical shift values. We will see what is chemical shift a little later, but what is the so where the magnetization will precess about that B effective, that will be little different. So that means given the same angle, the precession given the same duration of the B1 field, the flip angle for all three will be slightly different. Okay, although the difference here is not much, but there would be slightly there would be very slight difference in the flip angles. Okay, so let us last point, let us just see what I mean is that if this is my B effective, my magnetization, which is shown in red, will precess about it, right? And it will eventually reach, let's say, minus y axis. But if my effective field is not along this, let's say my effective field is now somewhere here. Okay, this is my B effective, and this is the magnetization. So it will start to precess about this B effective, and it will not actually go completely to minus y axis, and thus there will be a signal loss. Okay, so B effective, having B effective along transverse axis, one of the transverse axis x or y, is really important, so that so that's why you want to minimize the delta B naught, and you want to minimize the offset, so that your B effective is along x or y axis, and you get maximum signal. So I think that is all for today. So I hope rotating concept of rotating frame transformation is very clear, and how effective field is generated upon when you apply a radio frequency pulse, and how magnetization precesses about these effect of all three fields to eventually reach transverse plane, and then it relaxes back. All right, I think that is all for today.